My brain's from dancing too hard. I think I'm forgetting something major. Like people think to see that they're on my mind or something.
I feel like being in a different space than I usually am. I'm just like, oh, this doesn't feel like the show. I feel like you change space a lot, but I'm usually just like in the same space all the time. So this is weird for me.
Yeah, it definitely throws things off a little bit. Cool. Well, hi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Import Taste, an irreverent guide to drinking wine. Caitlin, tell us what it is that we're doing here.
We are hanging out. That's it. No, I'm just kidding. We're hanging out, drinking wine. We're talking about some cool stuff today. And we're two best friends. We live far away from each other. And this is how we stay in touch through these crazy, crazy times. This is how we stay connected. So welcome to our private little friendship.
Yes, you all get to see the inner workings of our private friendship. Okay, so I get to ask the question of the day. And I want to know, what is something that's not like super big, but that's kind of annoying you lately?
Oh, something that's annoying me lately. Wow. I feel like this should be way easier for me to think about because I think I'm annoyed by a lot of stuff lately. Okay, here is the first thing that's been annoying me lately is just like how much time it takes to like have a social media presence, and also just social media presence in general. Feels so like.
Speaking of, follow us on Clubhouse. We are doing this live from Clubhouse and here.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren's obsession with Crocs is like, it's less annoying and more gross to me. Sorry if you're Croc wearers out there. But no, I've been thinking like, gosh, I hate how social media is like inevitable, but it's also just like so soul sucking sometimes. So I think that's my first
this whole show is basically like social media. So I don't know what you're doing on this show then, if like that is how you feel about that, but also great. Glad you're here.
Like the posturing, like, I don't know. I think just the posturing of like how everyone wants to be so cool, and I think I just want to reject that. So
okay, I see you.
Cool. I don't want to be cool.
It was so funny. I was deciding between this question and what is your favorite podcast lately, but I went with that one. So maybe next time I'll ask that question.
Yeah, or maybe I'll steal it from you.
Well, maybe that's why I wanted you to ask me it, because I have a podcast that I'm loving right now, like weirdly.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have to wait till next week to hear it. Okay, so Britt, why don't you tell us who and what we're talking about today?
Oh my gosh, we are talking about Zinfandel and living in Zin. We're living in Zin over here. Yep. And we are so excited to have Cara Patricia from Decant SF on our show. So to celebrate Women's History Month, we are kind of trying to honor and bring like notice to women in the industry, women that we admire in the industry. And actually, I work for Cara. She is my boss and she is a badass. Let me tell you a little bit about her. So she went to CIA, the Culinary Institute of America in Napa. And after she finished that program, she got her, I mean, she could tell it better for sure, but she became a certified sommelier, and then she's also an advanced sommelier. She worked for many different programs as a sommelier. So she ran the cellar program at, I'm like reading this as I'm at Saison. I'm just gonna like bring her on and she can say a better job. So hi, Cara. Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Hello.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background? Because I feel like you'll do a great job.
Well, my background is, I think, annoying and is everything okay? Can you guys?
Oh yeah, no, I
Is
like
there an echo?
I can hear you. Everything's fine on my end.
Okay, great. I think my background's kind of annoying because I had a very difficult time in the industry getting started. But okay, yeah. So I worked in restaurants since I was like literally 21 years old. As soon as I could in New York City was actually the first restaurant I ever worked in was this place called Gyukaku, which was like a chain of Japanese barbecue restaurants. And it was pretty dope. At the time, I moved to New York like after college, like everyone thinking that like I could just like get a job like in my field. Which is not something that happens at all.
Wait, what?
Perform. And it was also like the beginning of like the big, like the Great Recession.
Wait, okay,
So
when did
that
you
was
finish
cool.
college?
2006.
Okay, I finished in
Oh, 5. Oh no, 2009.
No. Yeah, we finished 2000. I thought you were younger than me. Okay, so I
You
finished
thought
like
I was younger than you? Oh my god!
I
it's
did.
My 7-step Korean skincare regime.
Oh, it's really working. But yeah, I was like middle of the recession and it was like, okay, so restaurant jobs are where I'm going next.
Yeah, totally. So my major in school was Japanese language and East Asian studies.
Oh wow.
And I thought I would go and just like go to New York and like work for the UN and like become a diplomat because I don't know. I was like the first person in my family to go to college. So what did I know? But anyway, I moved out there. So I got a job in a Japanese restaurant because I spoke Japanese and most of the clientele was Japanese. So it was like perfect.
That's amazing.
Thanks. But anyway, so actually the first thing I ever learned about was sake and shochu. And I remember once like starting to taste wine. I was like 21 years old, like starting to taste wine and being like, oh wow, this is like as complex as sake. Like this is really interesting. Which is a really backwards way, I think, for like a white girl from Chicago to like get into wine. Is like you start with sake and then you move into wine because it's just as complex.
I like it though.
Yeah, but whatever, I worked my way up and literally it was just some rep once at that restaurant like who like poured some Pinot Noir or something. I don't even remember. I think it was like, oh my God, I'm having like a Proustian moment almost. I think the wine that they poured was like Frog's Leap Zinfandel.
Yeah, I bet it was. I read it was such a good thing with Asian barbecue dishes.
I just like thought about that. And being able to like describe the flavor profiles and the rep being like, you really can taste wine, blah, blah. And I remember that being like, that's a little bit of encouragement. And like, can I? And then I just started drinking a bunch of wine from the Finger Lakes I would buy at like the Union Square Farmers Market. But anyway, I got into wine and like just kept studying it. I worked for another restaurant when I moved to Chicago where they didn't have like a sommelier on the floor, so you really had to learn wine yourself. And that's like the first time I bought like Karen McNeil's Wine Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kept moving up in sort of the wine. But the reason I went to the Culinary Institute of America in Napa Valley was because in 2011 in Chicago, like there was definitely like a ceiling of where you could go as a wine professional, especially not having like, I don't know, like extreme mentorship, which wasn't even really that much of a thing back then. The first time I ever blind tasted was I worked at a place called Lush Wine and Spirits with, if you look at like the alumni of that place, now it's like incredible. It was like myself. It was Jane Lopes, who is now like an amazing author.
So it was incredible.
It was Jane. It was Rachel Driver Specken, who is like amazing, and Aaron Drain, a bunch of like really cool people. And that's the first time I learned how to blind taste was with Fernando Batata, who's like a master sommelier. So it's like I started getting into really making wine a career. I managed some like Michelin star restaurants or whatever, but whatever. But I was
I do love your confidence that you're just like, oh, it was great people. Of course, I was in it.
I mean, I look back at it, I'm like, Lush Wine and Spirits was like Chicago's like comedy store in the 70s. It was like 2010, 2011, Lush Wine and Spirits was like the future of like really great female wine professionals. It was a time and a place. Anyway, yeah, and I went to the Culinary Institute of America because I needed I remember like reading like Food and Wine magazine, and there was like an ad for this program. And I was like, oh yeah, I would like to leave Chicago and actually meet people who can maybe help me with my career. Mm-hmm. And I moved out here, and it was incredible, and I learned so much. And I think like my love for Zinfandel and California wine really started there, because obviously if you live in the Bay Area, you can kind of start to understand California wine. You start to understand terroir. You start to understand the difference of those regions. You know the difference between Cabernet Sauvignon or Zinfandel that's growing in Howell Mountain versus St. Helena versus Mount Veeder. Like you start understanding the terroir. But before that, I was like, oh, well, Napa Valley is just another region, just as, you know, Mendoza is just another region. And it's not really until you go there that you understand the differences between the districts, right?
Totally.
And that taught me so much. And then, then after that, it actually was really hard finding a job. Actually, in the beginning, my mentors were kind of like, why is this so hard for you? And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm a blue collar broad from Chicago, maybe. Like, I don't fit this fine dining world. But eventually I became the head sommelier at Hakkasan when that opened up here. After that, I left and I started working with the Cezanne folks as the cellar master. I opened a little wine bar with one of the proprietors of Cezanne. That was just for a little bit before I got super burnt out. Then I took my advanced exam, passed that in the first try, and
no big deal.
Whatever.
That's not my first.
That's the thing about those exams. I always tell people, I'm like, don't take it until you think you're going to pass it, because otherwise it's a waste of fucking money. And then
I looked down your credential list, and I feel like we should have had you on for a credential episode. Like,
sorry, I know.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
So much. You're like, girl, we only have 5 minutes left, and I'm like, I'm not even halfway through my resume.
I was thinking we have more sections to get to, but I do love hearing everything.
Anyway, eventually I worked on the supplier side for a couple of years, to become a better buyer. I opened my own place, which was my goal all along. Regardless. So yeah, I opened a CanSF, and whatever. I worked in some Michelin star places. I know some wine. I know a couple of two tree things about wine. That's it.
Oh, I feel like you know everyone in the industry. I'm always like, I don't know. That's like the thing. I'm like,
I know one of my friends today was like, oh, that's so cool that you and Cara got connected. I'm like, well, we didn't really, but Britt connected us. But like somebody down here in San Diego was saying that. So
oh, that's cute. I love that.
Well, it was funny. Was it Molly?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. Molly and I are like, I feel like we're very similar, just in different sides of California. Like Molly's a connector. I'm a connector. We like to just like help people out. Like, she knows everybody. She's less shy than I am, but.
Well, I remember when Decant first opened, and one of your very first Somm Sundays, I think it was Molly. And
I think she was the first. Molly, we're talking about Molly Brooks.
Caitlin down in San Diego sent me, she was like, hey, I don't know this wine shop. I don't know anything about it, but my friend's being the first person who's like being featured there. Like, you should go. I did not end up going, but it's so funny that I work there now. And I told Caitlin, because Caitlin's like, oh, my friend knows these people. And I'm like, yeah, she was the one who you told me to go see. And she was like, oh my gosh, that's the wine shop. I mean, let's talk about small world.
It is a small world. It's a super small world. And honestly, that's what's so important about like all of this. Like, when we get into these wines, let me tell you about the small world, about the wine that I fucking picked. Okay, like small world.
Well, okay,
the small world is important. The older you get, the more important.
Tell me what wine you're drinking. What wine are you drinking so that we know this small world?
All right, so I am drinking the 2018 Maitre de Chez Stampede Vineyard Zinfandel. This is Clements Hills, coming out of like the Lodi region, planted in the 1920s. Literally, it's called Stampede Vineyard because it was, oh, look at that picture. It was, they had like rodeos or something there, which is crazy. And it's like impeccably farmed. It's really beautiful. And the wine is just so good. And and I actually mentioned this. I mean, you talked about the article or whatever, but I definitely name dropped this wine because it's actually the Zinfandel that like made me re-fall in love with Zinfandel.
Mm.
And I'm talking about new Zinfandel because I used to go to Lazy Bear up in their den and just like get poured like old, because they like were really into old Zinfandel, or I would hang out with like the single thread people who were obsessed with old Zinfandel. And that was like, oh dang, like 70s era Napa and Zinfandel is pretty fucking dope. But like so much Zinfandel was like, ugh, I don't want to drink this garbage. And then you come and find sort of this new school of Zin producers that are making wine that can probably age again. And I think Maitre de Chez is definitely one of those wines. Like I'm gonna be able to. I am gonna put a bunch of these in my cellar, and I am gonna taste them in 5 years, and 10 years, and 15 years, and 20 years, and see how they go. Because I mean, you've tasted Old Ravenswood, and you're like, what the fuck? Why is this so good? Why is it Safeway or New Vintage at Safeway? Like, what is going on with this wine?
Brett, what do you think?
Well, Caitlin, what are you drinking?
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you the same thing.
We'll start with you.
I'm drinking the Adieu Punks wine. I know Lauren has a picture that she can pull up that's probably better. So this is an Old Vine Zinfandel, and I don't have a ton to say about it except for that it's a 2019. It's from Contra Costa County, which I always think about as like the Golden State Killers. Like, so I love a good true crime wine connection. And
crime wine.
my understanding is it's these two. I don't know these. Actually, you know what's funny is I know these guys at Nat Diego a few years ago, and I always work at Nat Diego when it's in when we have it. So I'm sure I probably met them, but I did not remember that I met them. But I guess it's just like two punks, get it? Two punks. And they making some dope ass wine. But the cooler thing, the reason why I picked this, so I bought this from The Rose here in South Park, where I live.
This is dope.
Yeah, it's rad. Two female shop owners. So just trying to like make sure that I'm giving a nod to all those women in the industry. And then we're gonna talk about that, Logan. Put that question in your back pocket. I'll get to that. But this is good because this one does say Old Vine, so I want to talk about that later. And the cool thing about this one is that these folks worked with this woman who we met. Her name is Angela. And we actually had asked her to work with us on our branding. This is not her art, but she did some art for these same folks for one of their bottles. So it's kind of a cool connection because I haven't met these guys yet, or I don't remember meeting them.
And it's not the branding we have right now, just so everybody knows.
No, we got some new
branding that's coming.
Yeah, we got a new logo rolling out, so we're super excited about that. And so we have like a second degree connection to these folks. So
yeah, like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, like 2. 2 degrees. So
okay, I am drinking the Onward 2017 Zin, and it was great because Cara actually wrote about it in her article that was on Imbibe. There it is. Faith Armstrong is the winemaker. It is crazy. Okay, you will never. Everyone, please put in the comments what your alcohol percentage is because like Zin can get up there. But what is crazy is this one is 11.9%. I'm like looking for it now. Yeah, 11.9, which is unheard of for a Zinfandel. I feel like.
To put it into perspective, I had heard when I was listening to a podcast on wine, they were like, it was another, and she was like, I have never seen a Zinfandel for under 13.5%. And then Britt tells me hers is like 11.
Let me just talk about real quick.
Okay.
The Maitre de Chez Stampede is 12.8.
What?
So we're talking about like how Zinfandel used to be made before it was over extracted, before it was like, let's pick it when half of it's raisins. Let's still keep some of those green little berries that are on there because Zinfandel bunches don't ripen.
Oh, there's Caitlin with Faith. Did you not put it in the show notes?
Great picture, but I forgot to upload it. But she was here in San Diego for Nat Diego recently. Well, a couple years.
Molly is tuning in, everyone, just so we all know. There she is.
Yeah. For anybody who's on the Clubhouse, just so you know, we are doing a FaceTime sorry, what is this called?
Facebook
We're doing a live
Live.
stream on video on YouTube Live. Go
and
to,
Facebook Live. Yeah.
and Facebook Live. So you can go to the Import Taste on Facebook, click the live link, and watch it.
Yes.
Why do I feel like such an idiot? I'm like, I understand Clubhouse, but what, I can see myself and it's not Zoom? I don't get it.
Well, I did a lot of research to find out the perfect platform for doing this, and it
It's
took a while
amazing.
to find a good one.
I was
well,
on a call this morning on Clubhouse, and Ray Isle called Zoom old media. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, you're right. It's all about Clubhouse. And what is a StreamYard? I'm into it.
No.
oh, well, let me just tell you a little bit about this wine before we move on. So
Yes.
Faith Armstrong is the winemaker.
Onward.
Onward is the brand name, and then she also has a second label, which is Farmstrong. So Onward is all of her vineyard specific sites. So if it is all coming from one vineyard, it'll be on her Onward brand. But if it's a blend, then it's going to be on her Farmstrong brand.
Yeah.
This one is, she picks really early. Obviously, you can tell by one, the color, and
Yeah.
two, based off the alcohol content. So like Cara was alluding to, it doesn't get to that raisinated state. It's not going to be this big, like heavy thing. It's very light, fresh, like kind of like red cranberries. I was reading, it was like red cranberries, blood orange, and pink peppercorn. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that Mendocino fruit always hits different.
Yes. Okay, Cara. So now we're going to move into some questions that we have for you about, and then you can, I know that's what you're here for. So, Caitlin, do you want to ask the first one?
Yeah, so I know you talked to us a little bit about your path to where you are now, which is owning a wine shop with another woman in the San Francisco area. So
Yeah.
super badass. That's what Britt and I think, eventually hope to do as well. Yeah, so
If you need any help, I'll give you our P&Ls.
Oh,
You can just,
thank you. You've already been helping a lot by helping mentor Britt, because what helps her helps me. So
I'm an accidental mentor, I'll have to say.
yeah, I'm so appreciative of all that. So what I would like to know is, like, what do you love about wine? So just in general, like, what is it about wine? You mentioned a little bit that you got there via sake, but like, what do you love about wine? I know it's a huge question. It doesn't have to be like fancy.
That gets me fucked up. No, I like,
Exactly.
what I love about wine.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I really love that. I really love that every time. Oh, there's so many things I love about it. Oh, I could wax poetic for hours.
Just pick your top thing that comes to mind, maybe.
I love that every time you pop a cork of, I'm gonna call it fine wine, right? Like not mass-produced garbage. Every time you pop a cork, you are getting like the expression of a time, a place, and someone's like hard work. Like every time I pop a cork, it's really important, I think, that we remember that, like, how long did it take from from bud break into the point that you are now opening this bottle? And it's going to tell you this whole story. And yes, you can drink it and not think about it, but certain wines, you pop open and it's like, all right, let's take a second. Let's close our eyes. Let's have a moment. Let's like say up. To me, I think it's like a prayer almost. Like it fills that like God-shaped hole in my heart or whatever. Like,
like
as
that.
an atheist, like wine is like, I am like, I bow down to Dionysus all the time. But like, yeah, it's just, it tells me something, it teaches me something, whether it's something that brings people together, whether it's the part of the end of a dinner with friends that actually makes the dinner even better.
Yeah.
Or if it's just something that I can teach somebody else about, there's just something about it that's like, how did this come from grapes?
Yeah.
And that is this mystery that every bottle has to teach me. And I feel like little Nancy Drew every day, which is fun. I think that's what I like about wine.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a great answer.
That is a great answer. Okay, well, speaking of Nancy Drew and you, that's my segue. I'm really working on my segues. But how has it been for you being a female in a male-dominated industry? Like, what are challenges that you faced? Advantages that you feel like you've had or not had? You know, like, I'm just curious, like, what it means to be a female in wine.
Well, it is International Women's Day or week or month or whatever.
Month. Yeah.
It's a month we say, hey, women are people too.
Exactly. 1 month. Only 1 month.
Yeah.
We get one.
Yeah. Makes me understand February, how people feel about February.
Oh, yeah. Not only that, but being the shortest month of the year. I'm like, great. Must that really?
I'm just happy that March is also my birthday month. So I feel like, okay, I can celebrate myself twice.
You're an Aries. That explains so much.
So I don't know if it's being a woman in this industry or being an Aries in this industry, but either way, I do know that like people hate me. No, that's not true. But I do feel like when I moved here, I decided like, okay, I'm going to try to be a little bit more resigned, or I'm going to be a little bit less outspoken, and I'm going to be a little bit less Chicago about things that bother me. And that helped a little bit, but then it got to a point of like, oh, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's actually just the way people view me. And I do have to say that when I was a restaurant sommelier, like it was really disheartening almost all the time, kind of just seeing like how guests perceive me. Like there would be times where I would be going to a table and I'd be talking about wine and they'd like ask for the sommelier. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, well, you think somebody else is going to come up to you in a suit? Like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, well, who do you think I am? Why do you think I have a wine list in my hand? Or I remember once someone was like, oh, a female sommelier. What do you call that? I'm like, I don't know. What do you call a female doctor? You know, like, give me a break. And I think that the real disadvantage when you're a female in the wine industry is when you're younger, because it's already hard as a young woman to have people take you seriously and think of you as like an expert. And then it's also hard for people not to think of you as like a total, can I swear on this? Like, yes, a total cunt. Like if you have any kind of reaction to like the status quo, and you can be labeled difficult, you can be labeled like,
I feel like you're preaching to the choir in like how I feel right now. I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't know how many times crazy has been told to me. Oh my God, if you call me crazy one more fucking time.
You want to see fucking crazy? Call me crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
I also love that you've like fully thrown out swear words, but just now you're like, wait, can I swear? Can I say this one?
Well, I feel like the C word is an actual
swear. Well, cunt is a really specific swear word. I can say fuck, shit, like all that, but cunt, that's really crossing the line there.
Well, some people are very sensitive to that word, and I'm like, I own that word. I think that's always been kind of hard. I think it's just being taken seriously as one, and also like being able to be a part of the group without having to kind of like be complicit in bad behavior.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, I have been complicit in shitty behavior because I was just trying to keep my job, or I was a young, you know, I would never call myself an ingenue in any way, shape, or form, but I was like a young, naive person just trying to like, oh, this is the culture, whatever. Like, sure, I'll go to a strip club with my boss and drink a 3-liter Perrier Jouet or whatever. And like, which honestly is fine, but like if I wasn't okay with it, then I wasn't a part of the Somm team.
Yeah.
Right? So like that can always be kind of difficult. or the thing that people think that like they don't want to hire a woman to the group because they're afraid that they can't be themselves, or like they're afraid they're going to hurt feelings. And it's like, well, maybe you should understand the difference between work and play too. Sometimes I think that's like the hardest part, is being taken serious by your guests, but also being seen as an equal amongst people who are hiring or people that you work with. Yeah. Because there's no reason you should look at my gender first, but you should also understand that, like, I don't want to hear about, like, you know, your jerking off to porn habits when we're at work. Like, wait until we're at the bar afterwards, you know? Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. That
What about you guys?
Caitlin, go ahead.
I think that really, honestly, like I kind of like love being a woman in the industry, but it's not because the path is easy or there's a lot of examples, but I feel like it has, out of necessity, created a community of women who come together to help each other. And not always, not all women, but I feel like some of my greatest relationships in the wine industry are women who have been like, hey, we know that you don't have somebody to be this mentor for you, so I'm going to come in and be that. So like, in some ways, in San Diego, we have like a pretty good community of people here too. So I think it's like a really great, that is like a really nice thing that's come out of it. Like, you know, when something's really, you face challenges, you create like a pathway forward. But I agree with you. The hardest thing is to not be complicit in, like, when you're trying to keep your job and you want to be like cool, you want to be the cool girl, you want to be like chill enough. And you're like, oh, I'm chill. I'm not going to be like all like, whoa, you shouldn't say that around me. So, you know, whatever it is, I think it's hard to stand up and be like, hey, maybe don't talk that way at work, you know?
Especially if you've got other chicks underneath you. Like, you want to make sure that they're comfortable too, and they don't have to deal with that.
Totally, yeah. And I think as I've gotten older, I'm more and more willing to just be like, yeah, that's not cool. I don't care if I'm the like uncool chick anymore. I'm like willing to nip that shit in the bud. So
I'd rather be uncool but respected than complicit and named in the New York Times.
Same. Or just cause undue harm to somebody, like somebody who might be observing, and them have to like go to therapy for that. You're just down the road. So
I feel like there's like a sense of almost like anything that I do is not enough. Like, it'll never be like to the status of what, like, I don't, and it's probably like, I think that women deal with imposter syndrome a lot more than men do. And it definitely has to do with that, where it's just like, okay, like, I'm never going to be qualified enough to do this job. I'm never going to have enough experience to do this, where men walk in and they fucking don't even have 50% of the qualifications. And they're like, oh yeah, and by the way, I'll take this job. And I always tell people, I'm like, okay, if President Trump taught me anything, it's go for that job that you are 100% not qualified for.
And I do have to say, I think there is like a little bit of a generational difference with men in our industry in that sense, because like I know a lot of, especially here in the Bay Area, I've met a lot of men in our, whether it's wine, beverage, restaurateur, whatever industry, that like, yeah, some of them, it's kind of easy to like, for them to all just like glom together and start a new wine bar and like be really popular or whatever, because they're cool dudes, yada, 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 which is great.
I think
and,
I
like,
know that wine bar you're talking about.
But at the same time, like as I mentioned, I'm like an accidental mentor, I guess, to some people. And like these younger millennial and Gen Z dudes are just as racked with imposter syndrome and everything else. And I think it's because they're coming up in a time where it's like, well, you need to prove that you're worth something, because just being a white dude, for example, is not going to open the door anymore. And it's kind of like nice that it's not nice, but it's kind of like leveling the playing field in a way where dudes will come to me for career advice and things like that. And I'm like, oh, you mean you can't just like walk in and be your mediocrity falls backwards into like a great position because you know the right people? Yeah. So it's like, great. Yeah. Like, get better, do better.
Yeah.
Like, awesome. Cause I had to.
Yeah.
I like made a lot of enemies, like trying to work my way up to the top to the top, just by being. I remember I had this interview for a job that I was so overqualified. And I remember going into this interview, it was already for a company that I worked for. And it was like, let's just say it was for an ambassadorship for a brand position. And I went into this interview and I was like, to the recruiter, the manager, whatever, I was like, well, I've already worked for this brand for so long and I have increased the like the case sales by X amount. I have I know this in and out. I've been there, I've visited there. I understand this brand. I love this brand. I have this wine is now poured at all these restaurants, Michelin restaurants, whatever, in my territory. I am incredible. And this wine is like part of my blood. I feel like I live there, Yeah. And I just went in there with this like confidence of, I'm going to get this job. I don't even really need it. You know what I mean? Like, that's like how I sort of wanted to feel. And I didn't get the job. And the feedback I got afterwards was very strange. It was both, you kind of just sit back and you expect people to already know who you are. And you're not really the type of person that's going to shout out your accomplishments, right? Like, you're kind of shy, you just sit back and you expect people to know who you are. And second of all, you're kind of cocky about what you've accomplished. And I don't know if that's really great. And third, you don't really look the part. Right? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. So I sit back and I don't shout myself out enough, but I'm also cocky about my accomplishments. But also what I heard there is, you don't look the part. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of an interesting thing that a part of the industry that I've always fallen in is like, you're this like fat loudmouth broad, right? And you don't really fit in. So I've taken that as, well, then I'm going to let myself become a real expert. And the people that want to listen to me are going to listen to me. The people that want to learn from me are going to learn from me. The people that want my help are going to take my help. And everyone else is going to like suck it. And I don't care if I don't look the part of a high-end ambassadorship brand, because maybe the ambassadorship like shouldn't be stuck on the old way that things are. And Zinfandel is the same way. Zinfandel does not look the way that people think it should look. And that is what is making it interesting again.
Well, speaking of Zinfandel, we're going to move into the Zin portion next. But before, like, thank you so much for being on. We're going to do kind of a wait, don't tell me rapid fire question. So don't think about these answers. You're just supposed to answer right away. And we'll go every other, Kate. And we'll just tackle them that way. How does that sound? Okay, I'll go first. Okay, Cara, if Zin had a zodiac sign, what would it be?
Oh, I feel like Zin would be like a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Oh, just like Caitlin. Why? Really quick.
I think that Zinfandel can be misunderstood. Sometimes it can be very like, you would think of it as sometimes as like kind of abrasive because it's very truthful about things. But in reality, it's like a soft, subtle soul that just needs like tending to and just needs to be understood.
Okay, Caitlin, do you feel like maybe you're more of a Zin or a Shannon because you've always been described as a Shannon Blanc and you're a Sagittarius?
I think I'm like a mellow fire sign. So I'm not sure I'm like the fieriest of Sagittariuses, but.
Okay, Caitlin, go next. Next question.
Okay, if you could crossbreed any two grapes, what would they be?
Is this for me?
Yep. These are all for you.
Why don't we crossbreed Assyrtiko and Chardonnay and see what kind of high acid bitch comes out of it?
Okay, what would you name that grape? Go.
Gaga.
Oh, I love it.
I love that. Okay, so then we like to do this segment, which we have 2 dueling names for. One is Fuck, Marry, Kill, and
Yes.
our viewers' name for it is Bed, Wed, or Behead. So if you're picking a grape variety to bed, wed, and behead, what would they be?
I would I would wed Chardonnay. I fucking love Chardonnay. I don't care who gives a fuck.
Hell
And honestly,
yeah,
when you
good for
wed
girl.
something, it's like for better for worse. I love Chardonnay. There's some parts of Chardonnay that I hate. Most Chardonnay I love. Champagne, Chablis, like anything from West Sonoma Coast. Love it. There's certain parts of Chardonnay I don't like, but depends on what you're eating. We have our
Any
problems.
marriage,
But
I'm sure there's
love.
things that you like and hate.
we like and I hate. I would behead Dolcetto. Fuck Dolcetto. I hate
No,
Dolcetto.
That's a hot
Every
take,
time I have a
girl.
good Dolcetto, I'm like, wow, this is Dolcetto that's good. And I dump it down the drain still. Hate Dolcetto.
Wow, that's strong feelings about Dolcetto.
I know, that is like
Like
hot take.
9 out of 10 Dolcettos taste corked to me.
Okay, so we got
And then what was the other one? Oh, which one was I?
Okay,
Fuck?
Ed, what you
Syrah.
fucking
Syrah. Okay.
wait,
I
what
could
did you say?
drink
I didn't hear it.
Syrah from
Syrah.
anywhere, all day long, anywhere, all the time, whatever.
Okay,
And
last-
yeah, I probably I'd have Zinfandel as a side piece on the side too.
I mean that's kind of like bad. Okay, last question that doesn't have to do with wine. Who would win in a fight? David Bowie or Madonna? Quick.
I think Bowie would, because he could like transform into different Bowie. Oh, Madonna could transform into different Madonnas. I think at the end, Bowie would transform into something that could like head to head fight Madonna, and I think Madonna would be very, very hard, but I think Bowie would win in the end. Oh, that one's. I could like write a book on that
You're
one.
thinking about that for the rest of the day.
I know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say Bowie.
Okay,
Like
Well-
yeah.
we have got to move on to talking about Zinfandel, which we're gonna do. So I think
thought we were this whole time.
well we were, but
Okay. How about yeah, go ahead, Caitlin.
I was gonna say we're gonna give our viewers like a deep dive into Zinfandel in 15 minutes.
I love it.
So,
Okay.
oh, go ahead, Britt. Were you gonna say something?
No, you go first.
Okay, so well, I was gonna say, Cara, you're welcome to stick around if you want to
I'm here.
and talk about Zin. Okay, cool.
So
So
drinks in.
here's what we have for you. Britt's gonna give us the SparkNotes version of the history of the grape. I'm gonna give you the SparkNotes version of the profile, and then Britt's gonna give you a SparkNotes version of kind of some attributes of In the Vineyard and some like things that make it an interesting grape. And I will talk about White Zin. I'm sure that's what you've all been waiting for.
Am I allowed to like add things?
You are, but you gotta keep them brief because we literally have 15 minutes till the end of this
I know,
show.
I'm so long-winded. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're good. Okay, Britt, tell us about.
So let's talk about, it is considered one of the oldest grape varieties from which wine is still being made. So I read Jancis Robinson's like notes on it, and she wrote a lovely thing. It was kind of like this story, like this mystery novel of the history of Zin. So we know it in America as Zinfandel. It's really not like only recognized in America, but it is the same grape as Primitivo from Puglia. But we thought for years that was where it came from. But now with new technology, new DNA mapping, it actually came from Croatia, from the Dalmatian coast of Croatia. And I love it. Like Croatians are really capitalizing on that marketing. They're like, oh, great. We're going to like now get on this California marketing and be like, oh, you want to taste the original grape? Taste it from Croatia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how it got to the USA. So in 1820, George Gibbs was a New York nursery owner. He bought cuttings from Austria, from this nursery in Austria, and it became popular as a hothouse grape, and it was making table wines. So it wasn't like making like really great wines, but it wasn't until, or table grapes, not table wines, sorry, table grapes. And then it wasn't until it moved to California. Sometimes I think of my own small little world as America. But anyway, so it didn't move to California until a nursery in 1850 from Massachusetts had it sent to California. It was so popular that after phylloxera, it was 1/3 of all planted grapes in California. Just to give you an idea of the roller coaster ride of Zinfandel. So it wasn't until 2001 that they linked the origin back to a Croatian grape off the Dalmatian coast. I am going to fuck up this word so badly, so I don't know if I'm going to say it. Do you have a better pronunciation? Go for it. What's the word?
Me?
Yeah.
Slurnak Kastelanski.
Slurnak. It started with a C and I would have not have pronounced it.
I don't know if that's like the correct pronunciation, but I do always say that it sounds like a building super I had in Chicago. Like, the plumbing's out. You better call Slurnak Kastelanski to come up here and fix it overnight.
Yes. So Slurnak Kastelanski is fixing your plumbing and also bringing you Zinfandel. Castella, so which is like the derivative of Castellanci, means black grape. Primitivo, which is the Italian word, which is Latin for first to ripen. It is since there are no French origins of this grape at all, it's very hard to trace it back in history, which is why it took us so long to find out, because the French, they love wine so much, they keep very meticulous records, but Croatians, not so much. Perfect. All right, Caitlin, tell me what's next.
Okay, I want to add a few things. So first of all, like
what did I miss?
A lot of people think of this as America's grape because it is like really only in the US and mostly California. I think only really California is where you get wines that are labeled Zinfandel. I did read that in the EU, technically they are allowed to use the word Zinfandel for this grape like Primitivo, and I think that's just a marketing thing, but really for many, many years it was considered America's grape. Also, really interestingly enough, I was also reading that, what am I trying to say here? That for many, many years, it was the #1 most planted grape in California, but now it is #2. So it's pretty crazy still to think that, I think there was like some debate about maybe Chardonnay being a little bit more, if you're talking about white wines kind of in there, but to think that it was the most planted grape in California.
I mean, that makes sense because Chardonnay is Cara's main piece and Zinfandel is her side piece. So that makes total sense why Chardonnay is #1.
You know what grape was most planted before Zinfandel took over?
What?
No, on Mission?
Yeah, Mission.
Okay, that's what I was guessing.
California.
I was like, taking a wild guess here, but that's what I would think. Yeah,
that's what I get. I'm like, Mission.
That's so interesting to think. I did not know Zinfandel was that widely planted. Okay, so a couple characteristics. I have a lot of visuals for this. So Lauren, I hope you're ready for our rapid fire visual session right here. We've got I got a Zinfandel, that picture that you have pulled up, go ahead and pull it up. It's a picture of the grape cluster and the glass. So obviously we've talked a little bit or alluded to the fact that Zinfandel can kind of come in a lot of different shades and styles. So we're going to talk about white Zin in a minute, but you can also make sweet red Zins, like dessert wines.
Mine's like Pinot Noir. Like you can't see it, but it is.
Yeah, mine's like seems really light too, but it kind of looks like this. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to note, that it can come in like lots of different styles. And I think Cara was the one who alluded to it earlier, that depending on where you're picking them from, you're going to get like more concentrated flavors. So like hotter climates are going to create more concentrated flavors for you. I think I have a Zinfandel flavor profile. Yeah, Lauren, that one's good. You can pull that one up. So again, we steal all of our stuff from Wine Folly because they just do some kick-ass graphics. Some flavors that you're going to get.
Speaking, they've got a lot going on.
So as you can see here on the left with that little green mark, California, Italy, and Croatia are the three main places that it's grown today. Honestly, California dominates that list like hardcore, and then Primitivo in Italy is a small amount. So we've got a lot of blackberry, strawberry. I thought peach preserves was a wild one, but cinnamon, tobacco, bramble. I love bramble in wine. So one thing I learned too that was interesting is that Zinfandel is not that thick of a skinned grape. So it's it's thin skinned, almost like Pinot Noir, but it just has a totally different flavor profile. So I found that like a little bit strange. Also very high alcohol. We talked about this. Like it's very hard to get a low alcohol one. And we also kind of mentioned this, but Zinfandel ripens unevenly by the bunches, which makes it a little bit strange because what happens is if you go through and you cut a whole bunch and you try to process that, you'll have a spectrum of like raisins.
Girl, you got in my vineyard section.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, all that to say, the flavor profile will change a lot depending on what you're getting out of that. So it responds really well to oak. So it can be kind of chameleon-esque. If you wanted to make it very, very different, you can add a bunch of oak and change the flavor a lot. And then one thing that you might like to know is that it's notorious for staining your teeth while you're drinking it. So by the end of this, we might all have purple teeth. But okay, so
not like our Syrah episode. My God, the end of that episode, I was like, can we not pull any photos from the end of this episode? My teeth were
up to that visual. So basically, this is the last thing I'll say is there's like a lot of berry fruits in here. It's generally, depending on how you are making it, it can be very like black fruity, lots of like plum, blackberry, kind of that bramble. But on the lighter, kind of fresher side, you get more of the raspberry kind of notes. One thing that I was noticing about this is like usually it's pretty low on a lot of the like kind of measures. It's like medium body. I think it's kind of lower tannin. Mine's like not that high in tannin, but the alcohol is just through the roof. So you're looking at like people were talking about when they're going to tastings that people don't realize how high it is and they just get shit faced. So
have you guys ever been to Zap?
No, but I've heard that's where you get shit faced. That's what I was reading. They're like, go to that. It's like Zinfandel Appreciator. I don't know, something. It's an acronym, right? Zinfandel.
Advocating producers, I think.
Yeah. Like that. But if you're Zin tasting, you gotta have food. You gotta have water. Really, really important. So,
which is really interesting because the Zins that you guys have are because you have the DuPonts, which is kind of like a natty style. And you have the Onward, which is also kind of more of a natural style, and Mendocino, so like super like light, bright fruit. This Maitre de Chez is like it's built like a Cabernet in a sense, like it's all structure.
Okay.
And then you have folks like the Turley Zinfandels, which can really range between like jammy and almost like when people say like they want sweet wine, I'm like, I don't think you mean sweet. What I think you mean is like stewed gorgeous berries, but then they have like single vineyards coming out of Napa that are like super dense and like blue fruited. And then you have like Earthquake Zin, which is like drinking chocolate syrup.
Yeah.
It can really run the gamut between them.
Yeah, and I feel like that was what your article kind of like was alluding to or was talking about was kind of like the many different ways of Zin. And those of you who are out there who are like, oh, I hate Zin, like maybe you just haven't met the right Zin.
Yep.
Okay, so what about the vineyards?
Okay, so in the vineyards, like Caitlin was mentioning, these are not ripening evenly, but actually what makes that really great is it kind of adds different layers to what you're tasting in it. So like it's because it doesn't ripen evenly, you're getting those green berries in it. You're also getting like those ripe berries, but then you're getting those raisinated berries. So that adds a complexity. There we go. I can't really, you can kind of see in there.
Old vine.
Yeah.
This picture is an old vine. That's why I pulled this.
Okay, that's why you put that one in there for the old vine.
Do you know where that's from?
Oh,
like sandy.
I think it was from the Zap website, honestly. So I have
Angelo. I don't know.
somewhere in Northern California. Like I might have been like.
That looks like.
Yeah,
that looks like a sandy vineyards.
Yeah. So when you're getting that, so you run a lot of risk of raisin and rot because they ripen so unevenly. So they actually need a lot of attention in the vineyard. Yeah, go ahead, Caitlin.
On that note, like what I had read too, and I don't know if you were gonna say this, but a lot of times because they ripen unevenly, people don't pick them all at once. They individually pick the grapes, which then is a labor-intensive process, which can make it really expensive to get a good quality Zin.
Yeah. So some producers, and it really depends producer to producer, like if they pick by the bunch versus by the grape. And so a lot of producers will kind of like judge their cluster, like, okay, there's enough grapes to offset the raisinated grapes and things like that. So that can be one thing versus picking by the grape. But they tend to need a lot more attention in the vineyard than like a cab, which is hard because it doesn't command the same prices that Cabernet does. And so that's why Zinfandel has this reputation that like oftentimes people don't see it as great because people aren't giving the attention that it needs because it doesn't command the prices that it needs. But with those different like flavoring times, it creates a unique flavor dynamic within the wine. Not only that, but Zin vines, like Caitlin was talking, or like the photo that she put up, they're very high yielding, so they produce a lot of grapes. So one, if you need to if you want to have a concentrated wine, there has to be a lot of pruning in order to make sure that the concentration is there, or old vines. So old vines, as they're like getting older and older, they're not producing the same amount that they were producing when they were young. And so that is really important, like Caitlin's Old Vine Zinfandel right there. That's really important to getting a like complex wine. Let's see. So like she showed in that picture, those are head trained vines, which means I was reading that a big reason why head train started, one, it is so useful for Zinfandel vines, but also it started in kind of like gold rush era, and they didn't have a lot of wire or like wood in order to train them appropriately. So they just let them head train. And so that became the way that Zinfandel was trained. So head train, like Caitlin's photo showed. Lauren, maybe you can pull that up really quick one more time. So you see it's not really, I mean, that one has a stake there, but it's not like those perfect cordons that you see. And this makes it so, one, you can't use machinery. They have to often be hand harvested. And two, like it makes it limits its yield. And so because of that, like hand harvesting, one, that brings up the expense. So that is like what we already talked about. It's like these are expensive wines to make, but they're not getting the expense in the market. So that's unfortunate. You'll often see Zinfandel in warm but not excessively hot regions.
Yeah.
Bigger regions in California for it: Sierra Foothills, Lodi, Contra Costa, and Mendocino.
Yes.
Anything you want to add, Cara, before Caitlin finishes with White Zin?
Wait, I can't wait to talk about White Zin. I'm obsessed with White Zin. Let's talk about it.
Okay, Caitlin, go. Tell us all about White Zin.
Okay, so we can't really talk about Zinfandel without talking about White Zin because, first of all, so we mentioned earlier that Zinfandel grapes were the most commonly planted above Cabernet and everything in like I think it was like the 70s. There was a couple different situations that happened. So Sutter Home, which I'm sure you've probably heard of Sutter Home, created by accident. They created sort of like a pink wine when they added a little bit of like free run juice to one of their harvests. So that one was initially dry, is what I understand. But then they also had a second accident that happened a few years later, and still in the 70s, I believe, where they accidentally they got a stuck fermentation. So what that means is that they were trying to ferment it, but for some reason the like yeast stopped working and it stopped eating the sugar. And so they ended up with this like semi-sweet wine, and it was also one of the pink ones. So then they were like, you know what? It's a lot of work to like get this restarted or throw this out. It's a lot of money that we let lose. So let's just bottle this shit up and sell it to people. And then White Zinfandel, what they called it, just took off. And it became so popular. This was actually crazy researching this for me because I have a personal history with White Zinfandel, which I will tell you about. But so it lost. White Zinfandel was kind of sweet. Well, it's pretty sweet. So it lost a lot of popularity in the 90s, but up to 20% of the wine sales in the US today are still White Zinfandel. Yeah. Can you believe that? 20%. It's an $800 million a year industry, which just blew my fucking mind off. I was like, what in the world? I did not know White Zin was that popular. White Zin still outsells Red Zin to this day. And the crazy thing is, so I have two, I know, I like was just,
that is insane.
Because people in the 90s were like, this stuff is gross. Let's start drinking.
Also, okay, let's be honest. We're one of the coastal elites. And I don't often think about like the middle of the country, which makes it makes up a big probably portion of the purchasers of White Zin.
I went to a cheesecake factory in Omaha, Nebraska in October, and you can guarantee there was some Beringer White Zinfandel on that list.
Yep.
And that wasn't the only one. There were like 3.
Yeah. So my sister brought up one of my favorites, what I'm going to talk about. So my grandma, who I call Muma, who does not drink wine, and the only wine she drinks is White Zinfandel. And it's so funny to me because I always tell people will always make this joke like, oh gosh, like White Zin. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? There's a time and a place for everything. I'm not going to shit on White Zin. First of all, you should know there's a lot of people who are trying to bring White Zin back in like a really cool way. I almost drunk one for the show tonight, but I couldn't. They were out of stock. But it was a dry. It wasn't Behringer or Sutter Home.
Well, when I worked for Brock Cellars, I worked for them this season that they made a White Zin.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah,
they only made it like one of every 10 years.
Yeah.
So
So I almost drank one, but you know what? I always tell people, I'm like, if I get a chance to sit with my grandma and all she wants to drink is White Zin, you better believe I'm going to go buy a bottle of White Zin from the grocery store, from the Bashas in Havasu, and I'm going to drink that with my grandma because there's nothing like drinking something with your grandma, and if it has to be White Zin, it has to be White Zin. So that's one story. And then the second thing I have to say about White Zin is I used to work at Outback Steakhouse, talk about college jobs forever ago.
my first one was California Pizza Kitchen. That was my first restaurant job. So like, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So it's just so funny because at the time I thought that was like we did not have a lot of money growing up. We did not get to eat at Outback Steakhouse. So when I worked there, I was like, oh my gosh, I have arrived at like the nicest restaurant I'm ever going to work at. But I had this one time that this man, we had our list of white wines listed from sweetest to driest. So that was what we told people, like, oh, here are our wines. They're listed from sweetest to driest. And he was like, oh, great. The White Zin's at the top. He's like, I'll take the White Zinfandel. I'm like, great. So I bring him a glass. I set it in front of him. It looks like this picture that Lauren has down here with the White Zin she can pull up. So it looks like this, 'cause that's what White Zin looks like. It's pink. Spoiler alert. And he told me, he was like, I asked for White Zin and you brought me this. And he was so irate that I brought him this pink wine. He was like, it was in a part of San Diego that I don't want to trash talk, but I don't think that he knew that much about wine, obviously. I don't know if he had all of his teeth either. So I'll just say, but I was like, I'm sorry, sir, this is actually White Zin, but he could not believe that White Zin was pink. A man could not drink pink wine. So,
Ooh, toxic masculinity.
right? So White Zin is a huge part of the Zin market. And you know what? There's a time and a place. I think Logan said it perfectly. White Zin with a tuna sandwich on the like Parker Strip in Havasu. You know what? I'll take that. So I'll take that.
Okay, but have you guys had like modern White Zin?
Yeah, it's good.
Like the stuff made from Monte Rio and Turley? That shit's
Okay.
dope.
I have not seen a Monterio modern. Wait, okay, yeah, no, I haven't seen theirs or Turley. Like that
Yes.
shocks me that Turley
So
doesn't
good.
White Zin. Honestly,
Yes, it's so good because it's dry as fuck, right? It's a rosé, but like they don't say White Zin on it. They say like rosé of Zinfandel. But Monte Rio writes dry White Zin. The Turley one just has like a white label instead of that dark purple label.
Mhm.
And they are dry and gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I love selling them because people see it and they're like, White Zin, I don't like. With rosé in general, people come in, they're like, what type of rosé you like? They're like, dry. And we're like, they're all dry.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
So all of
so
them.
the White
Great.
Zin, like really
We've eliminated none. Now let's continue.
exactly. So the White Zin, it really like freaks them out. And I'm like, listen, this is what White Zinfandel is because it's rosé of Zinfandel and it's great.
Yeah, there are dry styles being produced today for
Okay,
sure.
what's the alcohol on like a White Zin?
Like 12, 13%.
I'm sure it depends too. Like
I
on
was I guess picking
Oh,
early. Like
I mean,
I
like
guess
a-
this is
like
an
a-
11.
Like a sweet White Zin is probably like 8, 9,
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
The type you get at Red Lobster is different.
I know. I guess I was just thinking, I'm like, well, Zinfandel can get so high. Like, how high can a White Zinfandel be and still be dry?
I'm sure the
Okay.
picking is different.
Yeah, 100%.
Actually, I have to say that after this, if you guys go to Clubhouse, we've got a few Zinfandel masters in there that we can invite up to speak
Oh,
for
perfect.
Clubhouse
Okay.
exclusive.
So after hours in the Clubhouse, if y'all are in, there's a room for it. Like, okay, Caitlin, well, let's finish then. So then we can move to after hours party. Caitlin, tell me what you want to
Eat with us.
listen to with your wine.
So I would like, and Lauren can pull it up. I picked a song by Drake.
Oh.
Okay, so I picked this Drake song that says, "It's your fucking birthday," for a very good reason. And I also have a picture that Lauren better pull up because it's called, yep. Okay, that's right. Pull that shit up. So this is me on the left in my super cool denim vest and a mullet, which I also have again. So, and my sister Lauren, who just celebrated her birthday.
And she's our producer, and she's awesome.
And Lauren is always behind the scenes on these episodes. She is so kick-ass, and I was gonna play some cool punk song before I realized, like, you know, Lauren has a leap day birthday, which is kind of weird because I'm a procrastinator, so I'll just wait till like February 28th every year and be like, oh, you know what? I'll just tell her tomorrow, happy birthday. And then the March 1st goes by, and I'm like, you know what? I already missed it. I'll just wait till next year. So I wanted to say happy birthday to Lauren. You are so kick-ass. I'm so glad we're sisters. We're basically Irish twins. Sorry to get all sentimental on our Zinfandel episode.
Oh, don't get sentimental. Also, like, just so everybody knows, this is all free. We do this every week for nothing. And Lauren just like does this for us for nothing. So happy birthday, Lauren. Thank you for the birthday present, Lauren.
Yeah, Lauren, you're the best. I don't want to make you show yourself because I'm pretty sure you're wearing a bathrobe right now, but
your Crocs.
Yeah, your 2-year-old picture is fucking adorable. So happy birthday, Lauren. We love you and appreciate you. So
we do.
Okay, Britt.
Okay. Lauren, pull up my song. I feel like it speaks for itself. And I really wanted to hearken to the winemaker and kind of what this meant. And
For the Onward.
Wanna be close to you. You make me feel so alive. You make me feel. You make me feel. You make me feel like a natural.
so, yeah, just so you know, we only have 30 seconds of each song, Cara. Didn't mention that before we started, but that's the only way that we don't get muted. But yeah, so I just wanted to like recognize that female winemaker. I wanted to recognize Women's History Month. And I also wanted to recognize that Faith Armstrong's really like a natural female winemaker. And, you know, this wine's making me feel like a natural woman. What can I say?
I like it.
All right, Cara.
I love it.
What do you want to listen to with your wine when you're drinking?
Zinfandel takes me to a dark, deep place.
Okay.
And this one is so gorgeous, and it makes me feel dark, deep, and in love. So this is my song. Nine Inch Nails, The Lovers.
I was like, I'm very bad at knowing if it's an ad or if it's our music, but I'll probably dance to both. So
I like that. I feel like that feels very Zin appropriate. Okay, well, we're gonna
just sink into it.
I know it does feel like I'm slowly falling into a beanbag. Okay, Caitlin,
Zin will do that to you.
Oh, what's on next week?
Okay, so next week we're very excited to announce that we're going to be talking about Alsace, the region. Remember, like the world, France, Alsace. So
We're getting all sauced up next week.
we're getting Alsace up. That's probably what we're going to call it. So
That's 100% what we're going to call it.
yeah, so find yourself a wine from Alsace. They're pretty much all whites, if I can recall correctly. So
They have very light Pinot Noirs, just so
Okay.
you know.
good luck. You can find a Alsace Pinot Noir maybe, but otherwise you're looking at White Zone. Delicious. We're gonna drop some knowledge on that region. You will not be disappointed. You're gonna love it.
Perfect. And follow our Instagram at importtaste_wine. Follow Decant San Francisco as well. If you want to see the awesome wines that they're bringing in, let me tell you, they're fucking awesome.
And Cara Patricia SF if you just want to look at memes on my stories.
Exactly. Okay, I will be honest, Cara Patricia SF. I like your Instagram a little bit better than Decant's because it's so your memes are hilarious and they are like dovetailing with my own interest, which is zodiac like signs.
It's like zodiac, feminism, and like making fun of QAnon. It's like
yes.
Paige, I don't know if you follow QAnon drama, but apparently Trump was supposed to be secretly inaugurated today.
Yeah.
And it didn't
The
happen.
QAnon
so
drama is coming from my own family.
it's like it's like drink the fucking Kool-Aid already, you guys. Like, can we end this nightmare?
Never. It will never end.
All right, we'll move to Clubhouse.
We're moving to Clubhouse, but thank you all for tuning in. We had such a fun episode. Thanks, Cara, for coming on.
Yes.
Caitlin, I will see you next week. And as always, stay thirsty. And our song sometimes plays it, sometimes doesn't.
Intermittent likes to fuck us over sometimes, so we're like, can't get too cocky about things.
I'm really interested. I'm not a big, I'll be honest, this is day 2 on Clubhouse, so we're really going to see how that turns out.
I hope I don't have to talk to somebody in my pajamas while I'm going to bed tonight.
Thank you so much, Cara. Everyone, support Cara and Simi at Decant SF. If you're around, they bring in great wines.